Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 30 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. The strange phenomenon within the dragon transformation pool continued for a full 5 days. 5 days later, the pool gradually became peaceful again, while the faint purple-gold light reflected off the water's surface also quietly disappeared. Although the dragon transformation pool had regained its calm, Lin Dong still did not appear. This caused Yuan Qian's group to look forward to the outcome with impatience and expectation. They anxiously wished to know just what had occurred in the dragon transformation pool. Even though they were anxious, Lin Dong did not appear, and they were also unable to charge inside to retrieve him. Therefore, all they could do was helplessly look at each other and obediently wait. An entire month passed as they waited. After a month, the dragon transformation pool was now so calm that it was void of any ripples. The strange phenomenon from before was like the momentary blooming of an serious flower. Meanwhile, no one surfaced from the pool. If one counted the time, one would find that 2 months had passed since Lin Dong entered the dragon transformation pool. Yuan Qian stood with his hands behind his back on a mountain in the vicinity of the dragon transformation pool. He did not leave this spot during the past 2 months. His eyes were firmly fixed onto the dragon transformation pool below. From this, it was possible to see how seriously he viewed this matter. Many elders stood behind him with differing expressions. However, they gradually began to frown as time passed. Tribe leader, Lin Dong should be fine, right? An elder finally could not help but ask. It had already been such a long time. Yet, why was there no activity at all? Could it be that Lin Dong was killed when challenging Ancestor? Yuan Qian hesitated for a moment before releasing a bitter laugh. Even he could not sense the interior of the bone burial hall. This little fellow is after all someone recommended by Qing Shi. It will be difficult to explain things to Qing Shi if anything happens to him here. An elder frowned and said. Qing Shi had a rather unique status within the dragon tribe. In terms of seniority, even Yuan Qian was a little younger. The only ones who were comparable to him in the entire dragon tribe were likely those few ancient existences who were in a deep seclusion. Matters of men will be decided by fate. Yuan Qian shook his head. It was obviously pointless to be unnecessarily worried at this point in time. Entering the dragon transformation pool was extremely dangerous to begin with. This was something that Lin Dong knew, and Qing Shi was even more clear about. The elders ceased speaking after hearing this and once again turned their eyes towards the calm dragon transformation pool as they waited for something to happen. A large group of younger generation dragon tribe members gathered together a short distance from Yuan Qian's group. The 3 individuals at the front were Yuan Xin, Yang Shan, and Yang Feng. Presently, they were also watching the dragon transformation pool with uncertainty. It was likely that they had managed to hear some overwhelming information from their elders during this period of time. It is unexpected that he has actually entered the bone burial hall. It is rumored that only those who enter can obtain the ancient dragon bone. Yang Shan smacked his lips together. His eyes were filled with emotion. He never imagined that Lin Dong would succeed where many outstanding members of the dragon tribe had failed. This Lin Dong is really impressive. Yang Feng sighed. Even with his pride, he had no choice but to admit that he was unable to do what Lin Dong had done. The surrounding youths from the dragon tribe silently nodded and sighed. All of them were usually extremely arrogant. Their status as members of the dragon tribe allowed them to proudly look down on most of those in the same generation. However, this arrogance of theirs had suffered such a heavy blow that they had begun to feel a little depressed. As members of the dragon tribe, they were well aware of just how difficult it was to enter the bone burial hall. At the very front, Yuan Xin did not utter a single word. She gently bit her red lips while she hugged her chest. Those eyes of hers contained some stubbornness as she stared at the calm dragon transformation pool. Soon after, however, this stubbornness turned into dejectedness. As the daughter of the tribe leader, she naturally knew more than the others. Therefore, she was aware that Lin Dong had not only entered the bone burial hall, but had even barged into the realm of the willpower domain of the dragon tribe's greatest ancestor. Moreover, He had even challenged the latter. That fellow's ambition was not limited to merely the ancient dragon bone. He wished to obtain the strongest primal dragon bone of the dragon tribe. That was something that even Qingxi and her father were unable to touch. You are really ambitious. Aren't you afraid of choking to death on that ambition? Yuanxin mumbled to herself as she gently clenched her hand. Although Lin Dong's performance in the dragon transformation pool had greatly shocked her, she did not think that he would really succeed. Regardless of how one put it, there was only a single person who had managed to obtain the primal dragon bone during the endlessly long history of the dragon tribe. That person was a powerful existence who had once managed to unite and rule over the demonic beast world, the six-finger sage dragon emperor. She did not think that Lin Dong was actually comparable to that godlike existence in the hearts of all the dragon tribe members. The subsequent wait continued for a long time while the dragon transformation pool remained calm and rippleless. Time quietly passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. With the passing of each day, worry gradually began to surface on Yuan Qian's face. The originally still somewhat shocked dragon tribe elders looked at each other and sighed softly. There were feelings of pity in their sighs. From the looks of it, there was a very high chance that Lin Dong had failed. Otherwise, it was impossible that there was not even the slightest activity at all. After all, this would not happen even when someone obtained the ancient dragon bone in the past. Additionally, Lin Dong had been in the dragon transformation pool for far too long. The abundant energy of the dragon transformation pool was also exceptionally berserk in nature. Hence, it was not the case where it would become more beneficial the longer one stayed in the pool. If one was careless, one's body would explode due to the dragon transformation pool energy, turning into the energy of the pool. While the elders of the dragon tribe sighed in pity, the expressions of the younger generation members were grave. Originally, they had believed that a miracle would appear. Never would they have imagined that the source of this miracle had ultimately died prematurely. The setting sun hung in the horizon as dark red sunlight scattered down and enveloped the land. Tribe leader, we should perhaps seal the dragon transforming pool again. An elder looked at the sky and suddenly sighed. Yuan Qian's body seemed to tremble slightly upon hearing this. Soon after, he replied in a somewhat hoarse voice, "Let's wait a little longer." That elder let out a bitter laugh. If the energy of the dragon transformation pool spreads, it will end up affecting the surrounding mountains. We have already opened it for far too long this time around. The surrounding? At this point, he glanced at the mountains around the dragon transformation pool. Dragon scales had actually grown on the surface of these mountains. They reflected an ice-cold light when sunlight shone down upon them. Yuan Qian was silent. In the end, he let out a deep sigh and slowly nodded. The elders waved their sleeves upon seeing this, and many energy-like pillars whistled forth. Finally, they interweaved above the dragon transformation pool, transforming into a light formation. Soon after, the light formation began to descend and envelop the dragon transformation pool. However, thick dark clouds began to gather in the sky just as the light formation was about to descend. Lightning flashed and thunder roared within the dark clouds as a rumbling sound spread across the land. Wait. Yuan Qian immediately discovered the unusual activity in the sky. His expression quickly altered as he spoke in a deep voice. The dragon tribe elders immediately stopped the descending light formation. They lifted their heads and looked at the activity in the sky with shock in their eyes. A moment later, they seemed to recall something, and all of their eyes suddenly shot towards the dragon transformation pool as overwhelming amazement surged within their eyes. It cannot be. No one knew who had involuntarily let out this shocked mutter. The dark clouds in the sky accumulated, becoming increasingly thick while frightening thunderbolts gathered within them. The entire world seemed to shake and tremble due to the rumbling thunder. Bang! The dragon transformation pool below, which had been peaceful for a long time, once again churned with numerous huge waves. Countless pairs of eyes shifted towards it. Subsequently, they saw a huge whirlpool slowly being formed in the pool. Swoosh! A ray of light suddenly shot out just as the whirlpool was formed, reaching into the sky. Following its appearance, a strange pressure slowly began to spread. it was vaguely possible to see a human figure appearing within the ray of light that had risen from the dragon transformation pool. Rumble. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly pulled back. Countless hundreds of thousands of feet large thunderbolts suddenly whizzed downwards like 10,000 dragons and charged towards the human figure inside the ray of light from all directions. However, the figure inside the ray of light did not move in the face of the 10,000 thunderbolts. He allowed the wild and violent thunderbolts to ruthlessly smash into his body. Many lightning arcs danced in the sky. In the end, they were all absorbed by the figure. The wild and violent thunderbolts in the sky continued for half an hour before gradually disappearing. As the dark cloud scattered, an unusually powerful mental energy ripple also began to reverberate across the land. Sunlight sprinkled down as the dark clouds disappeared, illuminating the mountain range. Those many pairs of eyes were firmly locked onto the ray of light. The figure within seemed to lazily stretch his waist, before stepping forward and slowly walking out from within the ray of light. All eyes gathered on that very spot as the skinny figure finally appeared. This figure still had the same familiar young face. However, his body presently gave off a jade-like luster. His seemingly skinny body gave off a mighty pressure that seemed to cover the sky and land as it spread. In the face of this pressure, the expressions of the many dragon tribe members present changed drastically. They could feel a shudder surging out from within their bodies at this moment. It was a kind of pressure which originated from within their bloodline. The entire mountain range was completely quiet. Yuan Qian gazed at the skinny figure in the air as his hands slowly clenched tightly. A mumbling voice which contained an unclear emotion and a trace of well-hidden shock slowly spread. It really is the primal dragon bone. A young man hovered in midair while a warm jade color flickered on the surface of his skin. If one was to observe carefully, one would be able to see through his skin. Under his skin was a crystal jade-like skeleton. The pressure that permeated this place originated from his skeleton. Many individuals standing around the dragon transformation pool were staring in shock at that young man. However, none of them dared to speak owing to that pressure. In fact, their faces were filled with shock, revealing the waves churning within their hearts. Hovering in the sky, Lin Dong's gently shut eyes also slowly opened up. Following which, the white light undulated on his skin gradually faded. Finally, it became calm once again. The pressure had disappeared completely. Opening his eyes, Lin Dong immediately saw many pairs of eyes scattered across the mountain, staring back at him. He was startled as he quickly laughed in a dry and unnatural manner. Standing on a mountaintop, Yuan Qian also recovered his senses at this moment. His eyes wore a complicated expression as he glanced at Lin Dong, who was hovering in the sky. After which, he turned his head and exchanged glances with the elders behind him. Their faces were also complicated and mysterious. "Everyone, please be dismissed." Yuan Qian mused for a moment. His eyes looked around him before he finally opened his mouth to speak. Those members of the dragon tribe finally began to leave after hearing Yuan Qian's orders. However, there were still some whisperings as they left. Clearly, their hearts were not at peace. After the ordinary members of the dragon tribe left, the elders stayed behind instead. Their tensed faces caused Lin Dong to gulp softly in his heart. At this moment, he was naturally aware of the magnitude of the gift that he had received from the dragon transformation pool. That was because there was only one set of primal dragon bone in the entire dragon tribe. However, that only set was now taken by a person without any dragon tribe bloodline. It was likely that the emotions in the hearts of these members of the dragon tribe were extremely interesting at the moment. "Young friend Lin Dong, please come down and have a chat." Yuan Qian looked at Lin Dong and smilingly said. Lin Dong nodded and landed on the ground. His face appeared calm, but there was a caution deep within his eyes. Although he had taken great advantage of the dragon tribe by obtaining the primal dragon bone, he would definitely not hand it over. Otherwise, his training foundation would be severely damaged. "Haha, young friend Lin Dong, there is no need to worry. Even though the primal dragon bone is an important treasure of our dragon tribe, we are not a barbaric tribe." Yuan Qian's eyes were sharp. Although Lin Dong hid the caution in his eyes, he was still able to detect it. Hence, he immediately comforted him with a smile. Lin Dong felt a little embarrassed upon hearing this. Following which, his body gradually relaxed. It seems like young friend Lin Dong has obtained a great reward. Yuan Qian swept his eyes over Lin Dong and said. Lin Dong nodded. Even with his calm temperament, he involuntarily grinned upon thinking of the rewards he had received. After all, he had indeed reaped significant benefits. Not only did the skeleton in his body transform into the most powerful primal dragon bone, but his strength had also soared. In fact, he had directly stepped into the peak of the advanced profound death stage, and even his mental energy had reached the peak divine symbol master from the advanced divine symbol master. If he advanced a little further, he would have broken through the divine symbol master and advanced into the legendary symbol grandmaster, which was comparable to a samsara stage expert. Only after reaching that level would the might of one's mental energy be slowly displayed. Most people in this world practiced Yuan power. At the same time, there were also some who practiced both at the same time. Although there might be some individuals who were able to obtain significant accomplishments in their Yuan power cultivation, when it came to mental energy cultivation, it was extremely rare to find someone who was able to break the mold and reach the legendary Grandmaster level. As a result, many of them were stuck after reaching the peak of the advanced Divine Symbol Master, and they had no choice but to give up and focus on their Yuan power cultivation instead. Fortunately, with the help of their mental energy, they were far more efficient in their Yuan power cultivation. If one was to evaluate the present Lin Dong, unless he was facing some individuals who possess unique techniques, there were hardly any profound death stage experts that could match up to him. Moreover, if he unleashed his full strength, it was even possible for him to contend against a samsara stage expert. In fact, he would no longer be caught in embarrassing situations, whereby he could only rely on a few powerful techniques to threaten a samsara stage expert, like he did in the past. Therefore, he had reaped significant rewards during this trip to the Dragon Transformation Pool. It was sufficient for Lin Dong to part his lips and laugh out loud. "You met our ancestor in the Bone Burial Hall, am I right?" Yuan Qian looked at Lin Dong. Those dragon tribe's elders stared at Lin Dong after he uttered those words. Lin Dong could only nod his head upon seeing this formation. "You defeated the will of the ancestor?" Yuan Qian's eyes widened slightly. Even his tone became a little higher. It was likely that this was quite a shocking fact, even to someone like him. After all, he was once suppressed and destroyed by the will of the Six-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor. "I summoned the will of the Devouring Master." Lin Dong shrugged his shoulder. He knew that it was virtually impossible for him to defeat the will of the Six-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor on his own. At the very least, he was currently unable to do so. "I see." Yuan Qian and the others sighed in relief after hearing these words. If this was the case, it was still possible for them to accept it. "In that case, have you really obtained the primal dragon bone?" An elder of the dragon tribe involuntarily asked a superfluous question. His old face suddenly reddened after his words sounded. It was likely that he also realized that his question was superfluous. "Tribe leader, this is an important matter," another elder sighed. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "If young friend Lin Dong is willing to return the primal dragon bone, we are willing to pay any price for it. Elder, you should be aware how detrimental it would be if you remove the dragon bones from my body. Perhaps I will have difficulties making progress in my cultivation in the future." Lin Dong's expression changed slightly. He took a step back as he spoke in a deep voice. "Young friend Lin Dong, there is no need to worry," Yuan Qian hurriedly said. "However, the primal dragon bone is an important treasure of our dragon tribe. Although young friend Lin Dong performed a great deed for our dragon tribe, he is ultimately not a member of our tribe," an elder involuntarily spoke in a deep voice. "Aren't we turning into ungrateful individuals if we force him to surrender the primal dragon bone?" Some elders opposed his opinion. However, this is a major matter. Yuan Qian looked at the elders, who were arguing bitterly over this matter, before he quickly glanced at a wary Lin Dong. It was likely that he had also ended up with a headache because of this matter. Things would be alright if Lin Dong had merely obtained the ancient dragon bone. Although it was relatively rare, it was still acceptable to these elders. Unfortunately, he had obtained the primal dragon bone, for which there was only one set in the entire dragon tribe. The dragon tribe is actually arguing to such an extent because of the primal dragon bone. Are you trying to turn us into a joke? An exceptionally old voice suddenly resounded across the sky while the upper echelons of the dragon tribe were bickering. Upon hearing this voice, not only did those elders suddenly shut their mouths, but even Yuan Qian lifted his head in shock. He looked at the sky and exclaimed, "Grand Elder." Lin Dong lifted his head. He could see the space at that spot suddenly becoming distorted. Following which, an old man holding a walking stick strangely appeared in his sight. Based on the expressions of Yuan Qian's group, this old man clearly possessed an extremely senior position. However, he possessed a smooth, youth-like skin and his eyes were exceptionally deep. There was a vague reincarnation ripple surrounding him, and that fluctuation was even stronger than Yuan Qian. In fact, it did not lose out to Qing Shi. Greetings to the Grand Elder. Those elders hurriedly bowed and greeted him upon seeing this. They had an even more respectful attitude compared to when they were facing Yuan Qian. "Grand Elder, you came out of your seclusion?" Yuan Qian asked joyfully. "If I do not appear, I'm afraid that our dragon tribe would have completely thrown away its face," the old man with a walking stick said. This caused those elders from before, who wanted to ask Lin Dong to surrender his dragon bones, to become embarrassed. "Grand Elder, this matter," Yuan Qian spoke with a bitter smile. The old man with the walking stick waved his hand. After which, his extremely deep eyes, which seemed to have seen through reincarnation, looked at Lin Dong. His eyes randomly swept downwards before nodding. An emotional expression appeared on his elderly face. It is really unexpected that the primal dragon bone would end up being obtained by someone outside the tribe. As Lin Dong did not know the agenda of this mysterious Grand Elder, he did not speak up. All he did was cup his hands together. The primal dragon bone is indeed an extremely important treasure of our dragon tribe. However, it is precisely because it was far too important that no one in our dragon tribe has managed to obtain it. Since you managed to do so, it seems like you must have some affinity with it. Moreover, we do not dare to object to something that even the ancestor has agreed upon," the old man with a walking stick slowly said. "However, he is not a member of our dragon tribe," an elder spoke hesitantly. "If we stick to our pedantic ways, perhaps our dragon tribe will eventually end up declining like the other overlord tribes." The old man holding onto a walking stick spoke in a faint voice. Immediately, he paused and looked at Lin Dong. "Young friend, may I know if you will object to becoming an elder of our dragon tribe?" Lin Dong's heart rejoiced slightly upon hearing this. He hurriedly said, "I am more than willing to do so." Lin Dong was naturally able to tell that this Grand Elder, who possessed an extremely high status in the dragon tribe, was trying to help him. The old man with the walking stick nodded. Following which, 5 colored light gathered in his hand and directly transformed into a purple gold dragon seal. Meanwhile, there was frightening ripples being emitted from that dragon seal. "Young friend, this is the punishment dragon seal of our dragon tribe. It controls punishments and you will have the authority to punish any member of the dragon tribe. From today onwards, you will be a trusted punishment elder of our dragon tribe." Lin Dong was startled. He was not familiar with this so-called punishment dragon seal. However, he could tell that even the expressions of those elders from the dragon tribe and Yuan Qian had changed at this moment. Punishment elder. Lin Dong looked at the purple gold dragon seal on the palm of the Grand Elder of the dragon tribe, before he turned to look at Yuan Qian's group, who had a change in their expressions. Immediately, he came to a comprehension. It turns out this so-called punishment elder was not just an empty title, like he had imagined. Grand Elder, the punishment elder wields huge authority. Isn't it a little inappropriate to hand it to an outsider? An elder involuntarily asked. The punishment elder held great authority. Strictly speaking, he was ranked even a little higher than these elders. In the past, this position was usually held by a reputable individual in their dragon tribe. For example, the previous punishment elder was Qing Shi. However, he subsequently retired and this position became vacant. However, right now, this position was actually handed over to a human without any dragon tribe bloodline. Therefore, this inevitably caused them to be bewildered. The remaining elders exchanged glances with each other, and even Yuan Qian was in a state of mild disbelief. As of now, the Grand Elder had taken the punishment seal out. Hence, once Lin Dong had the seal, notwithstanding the dragon tribe members, anyone who possessed even the slightest dragon bloodline would be suppressed by it. After all, this was an object that was unique to the punishment elder. Like I said, insisting on our pedantic ways will only lead to our downfall. The Grand Elder spoke in a faint voice. He waved his hand towards Yuan Qian's group. After which, he looked at Lin Dong and smiled. Young friend Lin Dong, are you willing to become the new punishment elder of our dragon tribe? Lin Dong stared at this mysterious Grand Elder, who appeared warm and friendly, before he parted his lips into a smile. In his heart, however, he secretly mused that Willy foxes grow more cunning with age, the same way that ginger becomes spicier the older it gets. Clearly, the latter knew how crucial the primal dragon bone was to the dragon tribe. However, he also knew that it was extremely unjustified and difficult to get Lin Dong to surrender the primal dragon bone. Since this was the case, it was better to directly pull Lin Dong into the dragon tribe. The so-called punishment elder might possess great authority, but the dragon tribe would naturally have ways to deal with it if Lin Dong really abused the punishment seal. As such, they were able to keep the primal dragon bone in their dragon tribe without paying a hefty price. Nonetheless, Lin Dong was still surprised by the generosity of the Grand Elder, as he directly allowed Lin Dong to become the dragon tribe's punishment elder. Originally, he thought that most of these ancient tribes were extremely strict and always stuck to the rules. Since the Grand Elder has spoken, I naturally do not dare to object. Lin Dong cupped his hands together and said respectfully. Perhaps this was indeed a good way to resolve the current situation. Otherwise, these elders would be truly unwilling to allow the primal dragon bone to land in the hands of someone who was completely unrelated to their dragon tribe. Moreover, becoming closer to the dragon tribe was something that would only bring benefits to Lin Dong. As one of the 4 overlord tribes, their name held quite a great deterrence in the demonic beast world. It was likely that the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander would be stunned if news of this matter spreads to the Beast War region. Lin Dong, who possessed the punishment seal, would likely have little difficulties dealing with the 6-winged flying dragon, who had an impure bloodline. When he saw this, a smile immediately appeared on the elderly face of the Grand Elder. Following which, he said, "In the future, you shall be the punishment elder of our dragon tribe. You should learn the rules of our dragon tribe when you have the time." Lin Dong nodded nonchalantly. He also knew that even though the punishment elder held some actual authority, he did not have the qualifications to interfere in the matters of the dragon tribe. Additionally, he did not have the time to bother about these matters. Everyone was clearly aware that giving him this title was simply a way to connect him to the dragon tribe. Meanwhile, he was also able to successfully obtain the primal dragon bone, and he could occasionally whip out the punishment seal to take advantage of the dragon tribe's authority to bully others. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave first. Perhaps I will be leaving the dragon tribe in the next 2 days. Lin Dong looked at Yuan Qian. He had already completed the most important objective for coming to the dragon tribe, and there was no need to stay any further. Furthermore, there were still some problems to deal with back in the Beast War region. Moreover, he did not know if little Martin had returned to the celestial demon Martin tribe and whether the latter needed his help. Yuan Qian glanced at the Grand Elder. The latter nodded before he waved his hand. "Duan Dao, you should take young friend Lin Dong to have a rest for today. Please send him off if he wants to leave." Understood. Standing at the back, Duan Dao respectfully acknowledged the order. After which, he smilingly said to Lin Dong, "Let's go, Elder Lin Dong." Lin Dong involuntarily smiled bitterly when he heard that strange form of address. He once again cupped his hands and bowed to everyone present. After which, he turned around and left. The many elders on the mountain quietly sighed when they saw Lin Dong turning around to leave. The emergence of the primal dragon bone in this world was supposed to be a major event for their dragon tribe. Who would have expected it to end up like this? This little fellow is extraordinary. Do not think that he has taken advantage of our dragon tribe. Who knows what will happen in the future? The Grand Elder narrowed his eyes. His eyes contained great depth and wisdom. He softly said, being able to summon the will of the devouring master. Ha ha, this is not something that an ordinary person can do. Treat him as a genuine elder of our dragon tribe in the future and pay him due respect. No one can disobey this order. The Grand Elder's eyes turned towards the various elders of the dragon tribe before his voice became a little grave. The elders did not object upon hearing this. All they did was to respectfully acknowledge the order. The next day, Lin Dong saw Du and Dao waiting for him after he walked out of his room. When the latter saw him, he came forward to greet him with a smile. In fact, he appeared much friendlier than before, and there was even a tinge of respect in his demeanor. News that Lin Dong had obtained the primal dragon bone had already spread within the dragon tribe. This naturally created quite a big commotion. This was especially the case after others learned that even the Grand Elder had showed up and appointed Lin Dong as the new punishment elder of their dragon tribe. News about this matter spread uncontrollably from one ear to another. It was likely that this was the first time in the history of the dragon tribe that an outsider had taken the position of punishment elder. Young brother Lin Dong, are you planning on leaving? Du and Dao smiled towards Lin Dong and asked. There are still some matters back in the Beast War region that I need to handle. Hence, I will have to make a trip back. Lin Dong shook his head. Although the Deep Lightning Mountain's position and reputation in the Beast War region was no longer inferior to that of the three great demon commanders after the battle at the Divine Item Mountain range, its foundation was still quite weak. Therefore, he would have to put in more effort. After all, the Deep Lightning Mountain would be the foundation backing them three brothers when they charged back to the Eastern Xian region. Du and Dao ceased obstructing Lin Dong upon hearing this. He nodded and said, in that case, please leave. The spatial teleportation array has already been prepared. It will be able to send young brother Lin Dong back to the Beast War region swiftly. Du and Dao turned around and led the way after his voice sounded. Lin Dong followed closely behind. The two of them shuttled through the dragon tribe. Along the way, they met many members of the tribe. However, these people all had strange expressions upon seeing Lin Dong. Deep within their originally proud eyes was a trace of fear. This caused Lin Dong to be a little stunned. It seems like this punishment elder was really no ordinary position in the dragon tribe. The both of them finally arrived at the top of a mountain. The spatial ripple in this area had already become chaotic. Moreover, Lin Dong could see Yuan Qian's presence here. The tribe leader of the dragon tribe was actually sending him off personally. Haha, young friend Lin Dong, you might not possess the dragon tribe's bloodline, but you possess a set of dragon bones. From a certain point of view, you can be considered as a member of our dragon tribe. Yuan Qian's originally stern face was covered with smiles as he looked at Lin Dong. This junior has taken advantage of your tribe this time around. If the dragon tribe needs my help in the future, I will definitely do my best to help. Lin Dong cupped his hands together and spoke solemnly. He always made things clear when it came to kindness and enmity. If the dragon tribe insisted on creating problems for him because of the primal dragon bone, he might not care about them in the future. However, the dragon tribe had taken the best measure to accommodate him. This undoubtedly left Lin Dong with a good impression of them. From another point of view, it must be said that the Grand Elder was really impressive and wise. His gentle tactics allowed their dragon tribe to end up with a friend that possessed frightening potential. Although the current strength of this ally was unable to impress the dragon tribe, it was possible that the powerful dragon tribe might have to rely on Lin Dong's protection in the future. After all, who could predict the future? Yuan Qian was quite satisfied with Lin Dong's words as he smiled and nodded. After which, he clenched his hand, before a palm-sized golden totem appeared. He handed it to Lin Dong. You are to be considered as a member of our dragon tribe in the future. This is something that the Grand Elder has asked me to hand to you. You can shatter it if you run into any major problems in the future, and our dragon tribe will come to your aid. Lin Dong involuntarily smiled upon hearing this. The Grand Elder was really thoughtful. However, it was likely that he was much more concerned about the primal dragon bone in Lindong's body. After all, if Lindong met with any mishaps, his primal dragon bone might end up in the hands of others. Disregarding the matter of whether that person could endure the overbearing strength of the primal dragon bone, just losing the primal dragon bone alone was already an extremely huge loss for the dragon tribe. However, Lindong did not care about whether the Grand Elder was concerned about him or the primal dragon bone. In any case, he understood that from today onwards, he had quite a close relationship with the dragon tribe, and it would be a waste if he did not use this relationship. The teleportation array is almost completed. Yuan Chen turned his head to look at the distorted space, after Lindong accepted the totem, and said with a smile. Lindong nodded. He once again cupped his hands together towards Yuan Chen in a solemn fashion. Then, he spoke in a deep voice, "This junior bids everyone goodbye." He did not hesitate any longer after speaking. He turned around before he directly shot into the distorted space. A wild and violent spatial fluctuation spread and his body became increasingly distorted within. Finally, he completely vanished. The chaotic spatial ripple over the mountain gradually calmed down. Yuan Chen looked at the spot where Lindong had disappeared before he sighed softly. Then, he muttered to himself, "Hopefully, our dragon tribe has made a worthwhile bet, just like what Grand Elder said." This episode ends here.